Galán's side, honestly, I just don't see any clear flaws in his game. Certainly not right now. So it's honestly hard for me to say that he can improve.
If I had to bet, I'd say no. But thinking about Lebron and thinking about the fact that he's one of the most gifted paddle players that we've ever watched and that the game's ever seen, it's hard to make that prediction, and maybe it seems a bit harsh.
Lebron is one of those players that has actually changed the sport, I would argue. And I think that very few players in their respective sports can actually say that.
So I just think Lebron fits so much better on the forehand, given that Galán is definitely going to play, Paquito's definitely going to play, whereas the others can kind of shift around. I mean, Goya will definitely play, but that's it. I think those are the kind of fixed players.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Paddle Pod, your weekly podcast covering professional paddle, presented by Hugo and Gons. We're on to episode 63, and as always, joined by my co-host here today, Hugo. It's great to have you on. How are you doing?
Mate, I'm just buzzing to be back, to be honest. Obviously, a few weeks off, resting, given that Premier Padel has been taking a break. And so we decided to have a few weeks without any kind of episodes, but very excited to launch one again this week after obviously a little bit of a break. And to be honest, what I can't wait for is Padel to be back. I mean, I know we've still got another week's wait before Madrid's P1, but my God, I'm craving it so much.
Do you feel rested? Are you ready for the second half of the season?
I'm so ready. To be honest, you know me, I don't really ever want or need a break.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, on my side, I think I definitely feel rested and very much looking ahead for the second half of the season. I think towards the end, so especially the last tournament, given that we had the new pairs going into them, Lebron and Dineno won. So I think that's just going to make the second half of the season even more excited. And I think maybe on a personal note as well, the fact that it's starting P1 in Madrid, I mean, I just couldn't be more excited, to be honest, to have paddle in our city again.
Yeah, exactly. And also 2 majors left, plus the Premier Padel finals, which obviously are the last tournament of the season, involving the top 8 pairs. I think it's the 2 majors, 5 P1s and 3 P2s. So still like
the World Cup.
The World Cup as well. So yeah, I'd say that's 10 tournaments plus the finals plus the World Cup, 12 tournaments to watch. I mean, still, yeah, at least half the season, I'd say. Even if we're slightly over, obviously the second half of the season is where a lot of things are decided. Final positions, the World Cup. So yeah, absolutely buzzing, mate.
Yeah, still, I mean, we definitely got the number one race on. So, I mean, it's still a lot to be decided. I mean, by no means that the season is over at all. So yeah, maybe let's get cracking. And we're actually, just before we do, if you do notice anything weird about like kind of my setup or my microphone just moving awkwardly. So basically, I forgot kind of one of the tripods that actually holds the microphone. So I'm actually just holding it with my hands. But we obviously wanted, this is the first episode back, and we wanted to give you a quality episode. So I was not going to compromise on the audio. I guess it's just really annoying that I actually brought my microphone, but I forgot one of the sort of key pieces, and I'm just like holding it in my hand here like a bit of a douchebag. But it is what it is. Back from the holiday, still not fully back yet, and my brain's still maybe in a bit of a resting mode. But yeah, it's I guess it is what it is.
Hey, mate, effort is always what counts. At least that's what they say when you're a young kid and you come last in a race. I don't
exactly
know about what to do, but I mean, yeah, I thought you'd actually downloaded some funky piece of AI and the kind of made it look like the microphone follows you around. But clearly, it's just you forgetting your duties.
yeah, it's not some like kind of intricate video editing shenanigans that's going on here. I mean, I don't think it'll even look that good. So yeah, just apologize beforehand. But I guess now maybe starting and getting on and cracking on with the episode that we've got ahead. There's no paddle being played right now. Everyone's kind of taking a rest. But over the course of the holidays, there have been kind of some interviews. This is normally the time as well. We normally do see this when there's always a bit of a break. Players take the opportunity to speak to the media. and we're really happy about that. I mean, I think it's great because we get to hear so many of the kind of intricacies that go on in the tour, how players feel about each other. They speak about their seasons, and we had two, I think, quite kind of big ones. So Chingotto, maybe first. I don't know if you want to go into kind of one of the things that we wanted to discuss about Chingotto's interview, Hugo.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe just before that, I know there's no major, Premier Padel tournaments being played or other tournaments, but what is being played is the Pro Padel League out in the US. I don't know whether you've had a chance to see it, Gons, but some kind of major matches are taking place. I think there's a number of different kind of stages throughout the year. And I saw Dineno actually playing on the backhand recently, which I don't think I'd ever seen, and he was doing bloody well. So credit where credit's due. He's obviously off to a high point in his season after winning the previous P2 alongside Juan Lebrón in their first tournament together. So he's just gone for a gamble, gone to the backhand, and he's having a bit of a party. So yeah, love it, Martin. But yeah, I mean, I think from Chingotto's interview, I think maybe one of the highlights is, or one of the questions I wanted to pose is, Chingotto mentioned that he thinks that him and Galán can still play better. He thinks that they can reach higher heights. And well, yeah, essentially that. I mean, he thinks that even though they're playing the best paddle that either of them have ever played, they can play better. Now, I have my doubts, but Gons, maybe do you want to elaborate your own opinion first?
Yeah, of course. And maybe before I tackle the question, I do want to say that anyone that has a chance to just go watch the interview, we'll post the link in the description. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable. The interview, I think, is kind of like, I mean, it's an hour and a half, or like definitely more than an hour. And he speaks about like his whole life, his whole journey. I mean, Chingotto, what a man, absolute legend. So please do go watch it. We're just gonna like maybe pick here something that we kind of want to discuss because we thought it was interesting, but please do go ahead and watch it with Manu Martin, of course, and David as well, if you've seen David Fernandez, so a guest of ours, sort of I guess a good person that we know in the paddle world that we've had in our podcast as well, kind of like spoke or asked a question. He was there virtually present in a way. But yeah, moving on to the question, can they actually play better? Can him and Galán play better? Tough. I will say this. I think Chingotto certainly can improve. I think that on the offensive side is where he can improve. I mean, defensively is pretty much almost impossible for him to improve because he's a player with the lowest amount of unforced errors. So from a percentage perspective, it's normally around 3%. And in matches, he's even gone lower. He's sometimes hit like 1% or something like that. So, I mean, it's quite clear that from a defensive point of view, there's not much he can do. I think from a physical standpoint as well, I don't have any kind of problems with his physical shape, like how he runs around the court. He's got, I mean, fuel for days. He can last no matter how long the match like is, and he's always like in top condition. Mentality as well. I mean, I think now, especially that he's won some tournaments, I think from a mental standpoint, he's an absolute beast. But yeah, I think from an offensive side, like offensive point of view, we've seen that he can definitely maybe improve his aerial game, his smash in particular, and he has improved it a bit. Now, still not at the maybe his most close comp, Martin Dineno's like level from a winner's perspective. But if you can start getting from Chingotto double-digit winners in games, and you know how he normally does like just 3-4 max unforced errors, then I mean he's just gonna be a hell of a player, and he is already an absolutely unbelievable player. So he can improve, but I mean it's just marginal gains here. Now on Galán's side, honestly, I just don't see any clear flaws in his game. Certainly not right now. So it's honestly hard for me to say that he can improve because he's generating so many winners and his actual unforced error count is so low for the amount of like risky shots that he takes and for the amount of winners that he can generate. So I just don't think that, because if you say like, oh, maybe can he improve like his like he can do even more winners, but okay, but potentially his ratio then is going to get a bit worse because then he's going to take shots that he doesn't really need to. So I don't think that he can improve. Like, I mean, let me put it this way. I don't think he needs to improve. And I think both of them, I think that's a key aspect of this question, because it's like, well, do they actually need to improve to become world number ones? And in my eyes, I think they'll only improve as a pair if they do like get consistently challenged and they're kind of failing to win titles and all of that. Because then in that, I think at that point, both of them are going to be like, okay, like we definitely need to like just do something completely different. But in my eyes, I definitely see them as they are right now, able to be the world number ones and stay there at the top. So yeah, I mean, I just don't think that they need to improve, and they're just playing at such a high level that it is really hard for me like to say that they're going to improve, because if they do improve on this, then I mean there's just no point in watching battle anymore, because they're just going to be so dominant.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely. I think from a pair perspective, they can improve, or you'd think they can improve because they haven't been playing together for that long. So I'm sure they can improve kind of certain mechanisms as a pair, where sometimes maybe Galán covers a bit too much of the court or wants to get into Chingotto space a bit too much. And Chingotto can actually deal with a lot more aerial play and with a lot more of the ball than probably we all expected, because he's playing, well, he's one of the best forehand players in the world currently, if not the best based on his form. So maybe some things along those mechanisms, yes, as a pair. But I think on the other hand, maybe playing devil's advocate, I think that's something that's really helped them to until today and so far is the unpredictability and how unpredictable they've been, because people, firstly, they didn't expect they were going to play so well. At least I don't think the majority of the players thought that they were going to straight away be challenging for the number one spot and challenging Koyan Tapia and beating all the other pairs comfortably. So I think I can see why they could improve, and I could also see them maybe not being as well unpredictable, and obviously that's going to reduce their kind of chances against some of the pairs. But individually, I totally agree with your analysis. I mean, Chingotto can improve because there's areas of his game he can improve, as you said, particularly in attack. I don't think he can improve much in defense. But yeah, I mean, I think that's probably it. And then from Galán's perspective, I agree that level-wise, looking at all his shots, I don't really see him being able to perform at a higher standard than what he's been doing for the last maybe 12 months. Genuinely. I mean, that's why I've always thought, and we've discussed it throughout previous episodes, that there was going to come a point throughout the season when his level was going to drop off a little bit. And to be honest, it hasn't yet. I mean, there's been a game or two here and there where he's been a bit more inconsistent, but for the last 12 months, he's been unplayable and the best player on the planet. But I do think that one side of Galán's game that could potentially improve a little bit, and I've seen it in some key points during key matches, is kind of the mental side of it. I think sometimes he's gone for shots, maybe he's gone for smashes that were a bit too risky on key points, and maybe trying to be a little bit too aggressive, trying to close the points too quickly. And obviously, it's hard to say or to criticize him for that, because that's his game and that's what's brought him to, well, the number one spot in the world and being the best player in the world currently. But I do think that sometimes that's hindered him. Particularly, I'm thinking about some of the matches against Koyan Tapia, where he's maybe tried to go for a bit too, just shots that were slightly too risky, or maybe he could go for a standard smash and he would actually go for a por tres. Tapia is obviously very good at reading them, and he'd see that and then win the point kind of because of reading Galán's decision early. So, I mean, it's just very fine details, but I do think that maybe from a mental standpoint, there's moments where he could have been a little bit more calm in key games and key matches. But yeah, I mean, in summary, I really see them struggling to improve their current level.
And do you think their current level is enough to be a world number one?
I think it is, to be honest. I think their current level is enough, because I think there can come a point where Koyan and Tapia drop off a little bit. I think we've already seen that. So if they manage to maintain, well, this is Chingalan, if they manage to maintain their level as it's been so far, and Koyan and Tapia keep, dropping off a little bit and maybe have a couple of slip-ups, they'll end up in the number one spot. Whether that's this season or next season, I don't know. I do think it's hard for them to clinch the number one spot this season, because I know there's 10, 11 tournaments left, but Goyon Dabia have just been so consistent that Chingalan would essentially have to win 80% of the tournaments if Goyon Dabia keep making the finals week in, week out. So it's going to be hard. But yes, is my answer. I do think that if they maintain this level, they can beat any pair. They can beat Goyon Dabia consistently. But it's going to depend also on Goyon Dabia because they're not playing the best paddle that we've seen them play. Definitely far from when they were dominating throughout the first 6 months of last season. So it depends on them as well. Plus all of the other pairs, right? I mean, Lebron Dineno have just come from a big win with Lebron's return to the backhand, and they look really in sync. I mean, some interesting pairs teaming up recently with Yanguas Estupa, Paquito Cardona, also Gogi and John. They've already won a tournament. So there's a lot of competition out there, and it's going to be tough.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, one of the key components of this question for me is as well how the competition is going to react, because I feel like sometimes these changes come because you're being challenged. So you need to find a solution. So the fact that Goy and Tapia were dominating so much, I felt like Galan and Chingotto needed, like if they wanted to challenge, they just needed to improve and be at their level. And I mean, they've certainly proven that they can be and even better. So I think, and we've seen it between even their matchup, right? When Chingotto and Galan have won a match and then Goyo Tapia have come back and then they won because they did some adjustment and then Chingotto and Galan again. So if they're consistently being challenged, then they will improve because they will need to improve. And both of them have the mentality and they're so competitive that they do want to improve. So I'm certain that if that's like, if they are being challenged, that they will want to do it and it will happen. And actually, funnily enough, I think one of the biggest X factors for the second half of the season that could potentially trigger this improvement is actually Juan Lebrón, because I think Lebron on the backhand is just such an uncertainty that he could unlock like such a new level if he starts like beating Galan and Chingotto, if they actually start becoming a real tough pair to be and also winning titles here and there. I think they'll trigger something within both Goyo Tapia and Chingotto and Galan that could then potentially even unlock a higher level from all of them.
Agree. And I think also that, as you know, the other pairs that I've just mentioned, I mean, Paquito's level throughout this season has been unbelievable. So if he keeps playing at the level that he's been playing so far with a young kind of gun and a bit of a superstar, really, someone who looks like a great prospect going forward, which is obviously Pablo Cardona, they could really challenge. And Yanguas Estupa looked like a great partnership on paper. I know their first tournament wasn't great, but they're both within the top 5 players on their kind of side of the court, respectively. So yeah, a lot of competition, and I think that's going to drive all of the top pairs to play their best and keep improving.
We had some other questions as well that we wanted to talk about and discuss. The next one is from an interview that Paquito did very recently. And as always, leaving some just really interesting comments as well. Please do go watch it. We'll make sure to leave it in the description. But one of the things that I wanted to ask you, Hugo, from Paquito's interview, which I thought was super interesting, is: do you agree with Paquito that Lebron will be number one again?
It's such a tough question. Now, this was probably one of my favorite interviews that I've ever watched because obviously Paquito's always a great guy. He's one of those players who has zero haters, much like Chingotto, much like Dineno. He's just a lovely guy, loved on tour, probably the most popular player on tour. And he's so honest. So it's great to kind of listen to his interviews. Now, I was thinking a lot about this, obviously knowing that we were going to discuss the interview throughout this episode. And I know a few weeks ago I said that I didn't think Lebron, or I had a feeling that maybe Lebron was never going to get back to his level. Now, we'll see, because he started off really well with his return to the backhand, winning his second tournament of the season, because he won in Saudi with Galan during when they were still together, and they won the first tournament of this year's Premier Padel calendar. But now I think he's going to keep improving, but looking back and looking at the history of the number one ranked pairs and players, I can't remember any players, at least in modern paddle, who have returned to the number one spot when they've lost it. I don't think there are any players that have done it. I might be wrong, but I'm just thinking, obviously, Juan Martín and Bela moved on to Bela and Lima. Then it was Sanyo Stupa at some moment, and Maxi Sanchez was obviously also the number one at some point. Obviously, then it was Lebron and Paquito, then Lebron and Galán, now Goyo Tapia. There's never been a return, at least so far. Now, this tendency has continued, and these tendencies tend to be broken at some point. But I struggle to see it, being honest. I mean, I wouldn't see Goyo and Tapia splitting anytime soon. So for Lebron to really challenge for the number one spot, something would have to really change. I don't really think he's going to go back with Galán, at least not in the near future, given how kind of, well, how weird their split was. Obviously, there was a lot of issues and a lot of tension between them. So if I had to bet, I'd say no. But thinking about Lebron and thinking about the fact that he's one of the most gifted paddle players that we've ever watched and that the game's ever seen, it's hard to make that prediction. And maybe it seems a bit harsh, but it's just looking at the tendency, no one's got back to it. And I think if one player was to do it and break it, I'd bet on Galán rather than Lebron, just looking at his current level. Now, hey, who knows? Maybe 2, 3, 4 years, Goyo and Tapia they decide that they want to split because they've been together for too long. They're kind of tired of each other, and then maybe there's a bit of tension. Who knows? Maybe Lebron teams up with Tapia, goes back to the forehand, and hey, they could do it. Or Lebron goes back with Galán, or even teams up with Coelho if he's on the backhand. You never know. But right now, if I had to bet, I would say no. What about you, Gons?
I love it because I'm actually gonna say yes. And you kind of actually taking the answer away from me, like right there at the end. And ultimately, I just think that given in today's game, there's so many pair changes that happen just so quickly, and pairs aren't lasting a lot together, that I can generally see Lebron pairing up with Tapia, as you mentioned, potentially even going back with Galán, even though they did leave it a bit sour. But at the end of the day, it's just such a small tour. And I think players forget easily. We've seen all the returns, right? We've seen Paco and Sanyo back, even though when they left initially, Paco mentioned that it was like actually quite a sour leave. We've seen Paco and Lebron back again. So I generally think paddle is just one of those sports, and especially nowadays, given there's so many pair changes that it's like never say never. So just because of that, I mean, Lebron is 29 years old. He's going to be 30 in Jan. So, I mean, his peak, could you argue that he is kind of at the sort of ish tail end of his peak? And it is tough, like when you think about the competition that there's out there in Goyo and Tapia and stuff and Galán. But I genuinely think that they're all essentially going to be playing with each other at some point. And I do think that Lebron could fall, let's say, with Tapia, or like I mentioned again with Galán and be number one again. But I mean, for sure, it's a tough one. I can definitely see the arguments on both sides.
I mean, even with Coelho, let's be honest, he could team up with Coelho if he stays on the backhand. Who knows? I mean, you just never know. It's just, I was going to mention exactly what you just said. He is going to be 30 in January, and I don't actually know who's been the oldest player who's been ranked as the number one in the world. It was probably Bela.
I would say so,
like
probably
10 years ago when he was like 34, 33, something like that. I'll have a look at it afterwards. So, yeah, Lebron's 30. And obviously this tendency and this kind of rule can be broken. But I just don't know. I mean, I see Goyo and Tapia dominating for the next couple of years, being honest. I don't know why. I just don't think that Chingalan are going to steal that number one spot. And if Galán then decides to split to try to make that steal, because honestly, I think he's the biggest contender and the best player beyond Goyo and Tapia. I mean, individually, I do think he's the best player, as we've discussed even throughout this episode. But who would he look at? Yeah, he could look at Lebron, but I guess he could look at a lot of other players. He could even look at Coelho, and maybe that would drive Goyo away from Tapia. I just don't know. There's so many possibilities, and I completely get your point of view. It's very 50-50. It's just, if I had to bet, as I said, I'd go for no, but hey, game on. And should we maybe put
Yeah.
a bet on it or something? Maybe a dinner?
Yeah, I'm very happy to. I mean, time will definitely tell, but don't you think it's kind of crazy? You're just saying like that it's coming out of your mouth that LeBron's never going to be a world number one again. Like just thinking about it out loud, not like obviously I definitely get your analysis and everything, but just like the feeling of saying LeBron's never going to be world number one again just feels so weird, doesn't it?
It feels so weird because, as I said, he's one of the most talented players that we've ever watched, and he dominated paddle not long ago. And we've literally just seen him return to the backhand and win the tournament straight away, generating obscene amounts of winners. Sorry. So, yeah, it's bold, but there's just so many other players,
Oh, it's
and
true.
he is obviously not the easiest partner to deal with from an emotional perspective, from a partnership perspective. He is very emotional, he's very aggressive, he's very demanding. So that could potentially drive players away from him, particularly as he gets older. But hey, I don't want to doubt him because I definitely think he can achieve it. But my bet would be no.
Moving on to another question that we wanted to ask. I wanted to ask you, Hugo, around the interview that Paquito had again, and this one as well relating to Juan Lebrón, because it's just really interesting. The fact that he's obviously moved to the backhand, I think, opens up so many interesting like talking points. And yeah, Paquito actually mentioning that he thinks that Lebron is actually a better forehand player than a backhand player, and also asking and kind of opening up the debate to the public if Lebron should play in the on the backhand in or on the forehand at the World Cup with Spain. What do you think about that, Hugo?
Another controversial topic. Now, I'm going to keep it brief because I do think my opinion is quite clear right now. I agree with Paquito. I think Lebron's a better forehand player because of that kind of differential element. We've always discussed it. He's like a backhand player on the forehand. He generates so many winners, and his smash has always been unbelievable. His attacking play is as good as a backhand player's is, but that defensively, he's a wall, he's a machine. And some of his best shots are his smash, which is obviously kind of more undetectable and more unpredictable when it comes from the forehand side of the court. His volcadita, so his forehand kind of cross court shot to win the net, and when it goes into the kind of into the mesh of the side of the court, the front side. And also, I think his backhand volley is unbelievable. Also, including his drop shot backhand volley. So all that is more effective and more kind of he gets to play those shots way more on the forehand side of the court. So I would have to agree with with Paquito. And I think the fact that he dominated paddle throughout 3.5, 4 years with Galán being on the forehand side of the court probably demonstrates it. Now, I know he reached the number one spot. He reached the number one spot with Paquito playing on the forehand. I know they switched around towards the start of that partnership, and Lebron played a lot on the backhand as well. But you always felt that the partnership and the pair did better when Lebron was on the forehand. So I just think that even though I think Lebron can play anywhere he wants, I think that the unpredictable side of it and the fact that there's not that many or basically any forehand players that are as aggressive, as dominant as Lebron is, apart from maybe Cuellar, but he's a lefty, so that doesn't really count. I think that's what makes kind of me think that his attributes are more suited to the forehand side of the court. But hey, he can play anywhere, and it doesn't mean he's a bad backhand player. It's just that I think going forward, I also think he has more chances of getting back to the number one spot playing on the forehand, because I think the level of backhand players he can pair up with is probably slightly higher than what he can pair up with on the forehand, being honest. And then just very quickly on the question of whether he should be taken as a forehand or backhand player, I think you've just got to look at the other options beyond him on each side of the court. And when you've got Galán playing on the backhand, you've got Garrido playing on the backhand, you've got Coqui Nieto, who's been unbelievably in form playing on the backhand. On the forehand, you've got Coelho, Yanguas, who's been very in form, John Santh, but maybe that starts dropping off a bit. I just think Lebron added to that forehand roster of players adds more value than what he would add to the backhand. Also, he could play with the best players, like he could play with Galán, So that's
Paquito.
my opinion right now.
Yeah, exactly. No pushback from me here, really, Hugh. I mean, I completely agree with everything you said. I think Lebron is one of those players that has actually changed the sport, I would argue. And I think that very few players in their respective sports can actually say that. And he was the first kind of like he was the first proper like offensive forehand like player. And I think that your classic paddle was always left-sided players have to be more offensive, and right-sided players were more defensive. And even from like a physical and like a size perspective, you'd normally see the kind of like left-sided player being a bit taller, a bit bigger physically. Maybe the forehand-sided player was a bit smaller. So Lebron, I think, completely changed that, and he actually made paddle evolve into kind of what we're seeing today, which is such a fast-paced game, because the fact that he was able to generate so many winners and smash so well from the forehand side of the court just basically meant that him and Galan were unstoppable, and they were for such a long period. He's won so many titles on the forehand side of the court. He's been number one on the forehand side of the court. So I completely agree with both of you, with Paquito and with yourself, that he's definitely a better forehand and backhand player. Now, could he potentially one day be a better backhand player? Who knows? I mean, he's got the talent. He definitely could try and be that. But I mean, what I just said, I think will be very hard to top. And if he does do it, then I mean, he's probably got an argument to be the GOAT, because if he's able to do that on both sides of the court, then I can't see a more complete player out there. But yeah, I mean, he changed the sport for me a lot into the paddle that we see nowadays, and all the young kind of players that you're seeing, they all have the kind of traits that Lebron has, in terms of just being physically absolute machines and just focusing so much on the offensive side of the game and making sure that their smashes are really good. So you're seeing so many forehand players like adding that to their game, and I think that was all kind of the catalyst for that was really Lebron. So yeah, I mean, he had a huge impact on the forehand side for the game. So I definitely agree there. And in terms of the World Cup, completely agree as well. I mean, on the backhand, you've got probably better quality players than on the forehand. So I think there's a bigger need, I think, for Lebron on the forehand side, and he's played with Galan and he's played with Paquito. So I think the adjustment as well, when you think about how would other players adjust to his game, I think it'd probably be an easier fit for Lebron to be on the forehand, and then potentially pair him up with either Paquito or Galan as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to back you up and just to finish this topic, when you look at maybe when you're playing the decisive set, they'll probably play the final of the World Cup against Argentina because they're by far the best teams. And when you look at the three pairs that would play those games, Galan, maybe it would be Galan, Lebron, Paquito, and Coelho, and Yanguas Garrido. Right now, based on current form, maybe Yanguas cocky, but we'll see. So I just think Lebron fits so much better on the forehand, given that Galan is definitely going to play, Paquito's definitely going to play, whereas the others can kind of shift around. I mean, Coelho will definitely play, but that's it. I think those are the kind of fixed players. So yeah, I totally agree. It is true that Lebron started off as a backhand player, and he played with Juan Martín Díaz on the backhand and many others, Juan Cruz Belwati as well. But I mean, where he's reached the peak of his game for so many years, and where he's changed, I mean, the position where he's changed the game, as you very well explained, is the forehand side of the court. So that's my argument right now.
Moving on, I do think that there's a last topic that we do want to discuss, and it was none other than Seba Nerone mentioning, well, kind of giving his opinions of the first half of the season. And if I'm not mistaken, he kind of wanted to, well, he mentioned that he thought the standout players were Chingotto and Galan, obviously, and Coelho and Tapia. But other than that, he kind of gave big shout outs to Lebron and Di Neno. which kind of interesting. And yeah, Hugo, maybe kick us off because I'd love to hear your opinions on that. Maybe who do you say? I mean, it's pretty obvious that Goyo Tapia Chingalan are going to be they are the standout players of the first half of the season. But other than that, do you think, or do you agree with his opinion or with his decision to put Lebron and Dineno up there as well?
Yeah, I've got to be honest. No, is the short answer. So I think Chingalan and Goyo Dabia have just been a level above everyone else. So I think they're playing in their own league. Now, if you want to make it a top six, or maybe you want to choose the fifth and sixth, which is what he basically argued, these would be Lebron and Dineno were the fifth and sixth best players, or have been the fifth and sixth best players so far this season. I would go for different players. I would actually go for Mike Yanguas, who's been the most improved player of the season so far for me. I mean, he's dominated alongside Garrido. He's beaten Lebron, and he's also, Lebron Galán, sorry. And he's also, they beat the Super Pibes, Stupan Dineno. So, I mean, they've beat the top seeds. And I think Yanguas, as we've previously discussed, has been the key man in that pair. So Yanguas would definitely be in the list for me. And I'm struggling to pick the sixth best. And I'd probably say it's someone between Paquito and Coquinieto. Now, Paquito, because he's been so consistent. And when you actually look at kind of the points rankings looking at the data from Padel Intelligence and also from our colleagues that do their own kind of paddle data analysis at Paddle Up, Paquito is always right up there. Now, the amount of winners he generates compared to the enforced errors that he has is just so high that it's hard to overlook him. Now, I know he hasn't been as successful so far this season. He hasn't won a tournament yet, and his partnership with Lebron didn't work. But I think he shouldn't be overlooked. And Gogi Nieto, I mean, my God, he's just reached a new height. I never thought he'd reach this level in his game. I mean, defensively, he's just a wall. One of the best players on tour defensively. But offensively, he started adding like a smash to his game and very aggressive volleys that have, meant that him and John Santh have actually won a tournament already. And I think they've managed to challenge some of the top pairs. I mean, they beat Lebron and Paquito twice, if I'm not mistaken. So Koki's been the key man in that partnership with John. So those would be my key men. I just think Lebron has underperformed so far. I know he's won the tournament, the most recent tournament alongside Martin Dineno on his return to the backhand. So credit where credit's due. But I don't think that his season has been what he expected or what paddle fans and the paddle world expected. And Martin Dineno, I mean, being honest, his partnership with Stupa has been, disappointing. I think they'd both agree. And that's the reason why they split, because they were literally challenging for the number one spot last season. So I don't agree with Ned on it on this occasion. How about you, Gons?
Yeah, it's a no from me as well. And I think this can answer to be really easily, because if you literally go up to Lebron right now and you ask him, how happy are you with the first half of the season? I'm 99.9% sure he'll answer that he's not very happy about it and that he thinks he can do better. And if you ask Martin Dineno the same question, I'm pretty sure that he's going to give the exact same answer. So both of them, I'm pretty sure that they don't think that they've reached the level that they know they can reach and that they have reached in the past, this first half of the season. So I'm pretty sure that themselves, they wouldn't put, or they wouldn't be up there if they kind of made a list. And yeah, I mean, to go like from where they've been to how they've kind of performed this first half of the season, I think it's been disappointing on both sides. Because especially, I mean, from the Nena side, from basically winning tons of tournaments and being in finals consistently, to just, if I'm not mistaken, reaching one final, which they lost to Chingalan. So, and no silverware at all. Now, I'm not really counting the Finland P2 just because like it was literally the last tournament. Of course, that now I'm sure it means something to them. But on Lebron's side, I mean, I guess the only thing that you could look at it is from an objective point of view, and you could say, look, he's technically won 2 tournaments. So apart from Chingalan and Goyo Tapia, he's the player with the most tournaments this season. So from that perspective, but again, I'm sure that inside he's like, yeah, I mean, sure, I won 2 tournaments, but by no means have I done a great first half of the season, and I could do a lot better. So yeah, that's it for me. I mean, I think you mentioned some of the names that as well I would put up there. Garrido Yanguas definitely have stepped up and improved a lot more. They're probably quite happy about their first half of the season. Probably Yanguas more than Garrido, given how Garrido's kind of ended with the partnership being broken. And Goki and John as well. I'm pretty sure as well that they're quite happy with where they're at. And so yeah, I mean, I would say that for the first half of the season, wouldn't agree with it, but I mean, obviously, let's see how the second half of the season goes.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if this was looking at how the season is going to end, and we've got to pick 2 more players beyond Chingalan and Goyo Tapia, maybe it would be Lebron and Dineno, because they've just won the most recent tournament. They played really well. It was Lebron's first tournament in the backhand. He was already the MVP. So it may well be. And I totally agree. Thinking from tournaments 1 perspective, Lebron is the next best after Chingalan and Goyo Tapia. But he hasn't performed to the level he expected. And that's the reason why his partnership with Paquito, which was poised to be one of the key competitors for Goyo and Tapia, has ended so quickly and abruptly. So, yeah, totally agree. And I was a bit surprised because I think Nerone is normally really honest and quite accurate. And I normally agree with his opinion. Now, it doesn't mean that his opinion is wrong and ours is right. It's just I was surprised that he would say that Lebron has been one of the key men of this first half of the season when, I mean, he's literally called it quits with Paquito because they've been underperforming significantly. So, yeah, I guess don't agree, but what a player Nerone was.
Yeah, very much. So we still see clips out there of him playing even now, and yeah, they are pretty incredible. But yeah, that probably brings us to the end of the episode. And I mean, Hugo, it's been absolute pleasure. I'm so glad that we're back doing these, and I'm very happy to discuss paddle again with you. Now, all that we need is some, Premier Padel to actually be back and be discussing the actual tournaments themselves. But nonetheless, I do hope that everyone out there enjoyed. And yeah, very happy to be back. Please do give us a like and subscribe as well. And we'll be going at it again next week.
Yeah, guys, please leave your comments about, these questions that we've discussed, whether Lebron's a better forehand or backhand player, whether he'll be back in the number 1 spot. I mean, are you team Gons or are you team Hugo? It'd be great to have you backing me, but I have a feeling that most people are going to back you. I don't know why.
Are you team right or are you team wrong?
Exactly. And yeah, I mean, we weren't actually going to record an episode this week because we haven't had paddle for a number of weeks, but yeah, it looks like our content and our episodes are being really well received, and we wanted to kind of treat you with a new video. So yeah, please give us some love and yeah, keep commenting, keep watching us, and let us know if you want to kind of have us record some episode focusing on any topic within the paddle landscape, obviously. Other than that, great to be back and see you very soon.